Sergeant Cole Maddox stepped out of his truck, the cold morning air biting at his face and fingers as he swung his legs down to meet the gravel beneath him. Each boot crunched against the small stones with a familiar rhythm that reminded him of long marches through desert outposts and dirt-filled training grounds. Except now, the weight of a rifle was absent from his shoulders, replaced by the faint ache in his knee from a shrapnel injury that never fully healed. Beside him, Riker, his loyal German shepherd, leapt gracefully to the ground, ears pricked forward and tail rigid with alertness. The bond between them had been forged in sandstorms, under gunfire, in moments when a single misstep could mean life or death. Riker had been with him through all of it, a silent sentinel who seemed to know Cole better than he knew himself. Their connection was instantaneous and instinctive, a language without words, punctuated by body shifts, nudges, and glances that spoke volumes. The junkyard sprawled ahead like a chaotic monument to abandonment. Mountains of crushed vehicles rose in jagged peaks, rusted appliances lay scattered like forgotten bones, and twisted metal reflected the pale dawn sunlight in fragmented flashes. The air carried a mix of iron and oil, dirt and decay, a smell that was almost alive in its harshness. Cole had come for a simple reason, a replacement engine part for his old truck, but the junkyard always had a way of revealing something unexpected. He had learned this truth during his deployments. The quiet places, the overlooked corners, often held the most significance. Riker, however, was not interested in scrap engines or bolts. He paced in tight circles at Cole's feet, his muscles coiled, nose low to the ground, ears swiveling like radar dishes scanning invisible signals. Cole watched him carefully, his instincts immediately alert. Riker was disciplined, obedient, trained to respond at a whisper. But today, he ignored commands, moving with an intensity that made Cole's chest tighten. He had seen this behavior only in the field, when danger or the scent of something critical drew the dog like a magnet. The hair along Riker's spine bristled, his tail stiffened into a rigid line, and a low, almost inaudible growl vibrated in his throat. Not threatening, but insistent, urgent, a message Cole understood even without words. "Follow me. Something's here." Cole adjusted the strap of his worn jacket over his shoulder and fell into step behind Riker, moving faster than he would have believed possible given the stiffness in his knees. The dog weaved through aisles of twisted metal, slipping between the jagged edges of wrecked cars and stacks of discarded refrigerators with a grace that seemed impossible. Cole's eyes scanned the surroundings. He was trained to notice movement, shadows, unnatural shapes, but he saw nothing that explained Riker's intensity. And yet, the dog's nose pressed to the ground, sniffing, tracing an invisible trail. Cole's own pulse began to synchronize with Riker's movements, the rhythm of the hunt settling in his chest like the echo of a familiar drum. They reached the far end of the junkyard, where weeds clawed their way through cracks in the concrete, and the fence sagged under its own weight, a forgotten boundary between the world of neglect and the road beyond. Riker stopped abruptly in front of a shipping container, a massive rectangle of rust and peeling paint. The dog's body was tense, his low whining now more pronounced, sharp and insistent. Cole crouched slightly, instincts on edge, and studied the container. The padlock looked old, worn, corroded, yet it clung stubbornly to its hinge. "Riker, easy," Cole murmured, but the dog ignored him, pressing a paw against the metal door and barking with a desperation that made Cole's chest constrict. This was not the curiosity of a playful dog or the alertness of routine patrol. No, this was the exact same intensity Riker had displayed in Afghanistan when they had stumbled upon trapped villagers under a collapsed building, when a wounded child cried out and only the dog's heightened senses could lead Cole to the exact location. Cole's stomach tightened, memories flashing unbidden. Dust-choked streets, the smell of blood and sweat, the desperation of lives on the line. His throat went dry, but he forced himself to focus on the present. He stepped forward cautiously, eyes scanning the container's edges for any sign of what might be inside. The whining grew more urgent, a rhythmic plea that seemed almost human in its despair. The metal of the door felt cold against his fingers as he tested the lock. Rust flaked under his touch, and one solid kick sent it clanging to the ground, the sound echoing across the yard and stirring the birds into flight. Cole's heart thudded violently, a mixture of adrenaline, fear, and a gnawing anticipation that churned in his stomach. With a deep breath, he swung the door open, and a wave of odors hit him. Dampness, decay, neglect. And beneath that, something far more primal: desperation, hunger, and the faint, unmistakable scent of life struggling to survive. His eyes adjusted to the dim interior of the container, and there, curled in the far corner, were 3 tiny puppies, their fur matted, their limbs thin and fragile, trembling violently against each other. Beside them lay a mother dog, her body gaunt, ribs visible beneath coarse fur, breathing shallowly but keeping her gaze fixed on her pups with a devotion that seemed to radiate from her very being. Cole's hand went to his mouth as the first tight wave of emotion hit him. He had witnessed horrors and suffering before, yet something about the quiet endurance of this mother, her instinct to shield her helpless offspring, cut deeper than any battlefield memory. Riker stepped carefully into the container, his movements measured, tail low, eyes soft as he approached the mother. A low, sympathetic whine escaped him, a sound Cole had rarely heard, one that communicated understanding, reassurance, and shared grief. The mother dog lifted her head weakly, nostrils flaring, eyes blinking in surprise and caution, and then, perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit in Riker, or sensing Cole's gentle presence, she settled slightly, allowing the dog to nuzzle her with careful affection. Cole's breath caught in his throat. He sank to his knees, his fingers trembling as he extended them toward the puppies. He wrapped them gently in the corner of his jacket, marveling at their fragility and determination to cling to life. He whispered to them, his voice breaking in ways he had not anticipated. "It's okay. You're safe now. We've got you." The dog's whine shifted into a softer, urgent murmur, as if urging Cole to move quickly, to act, to save. Cole met Riker's eyes, the silent conversation passing between them. The bond was unbreakable, the mission clear. The morning light fell across the rusted metal, glinting off peeling paint, but it could not outshine the intensity of what was about to happen next: the rescue, the salvation, and the tears that Cole would not yet allow himself to shed, not knowing how much the encounter would mark the rest of his life. Cole's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the 3 tiny puppies from the corner of the container, the weight of their fragile bodies almost unbearably light. Their little limbs dangled, ribs faintly visible beneath their dirty, matted fur, and their eyes, barely open, blinked up at him with uncomprehending trust. Each one whined softly, a sound that resonated deep inside Cole's chest, stirring a storm of emotions he hadn't felt in years. He had seen suffering before, in the sand-choked villages of foreign lands, in explosions that ripped apart homes and lives. But there was something uniquely piercing about this quiet desperation, the innocence of being so dependent on him, creatures whose only hope for survival rested entirely in his hands. Beside him, Riker stayed with the mother dog, moving with deliberate caution. The dog, a young shepherd mix with a once shiny coat now dulled by neglect and malnourishment, lifted her head weakly, eyes glazed but fixated on her puppies. Her breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible, yet her attention never wavered. Riker, who had never been gentle with anything he wasn't trained to protect, now lowered his body, placing a soft, reassuring nuzzle against her neck. A quiet, sympathetic whine escaped him, a sound so filled with empathy that Cole's chest constricted painfully. It was as if the dog was saying, "I know what it feels like to suffer. I know what it means to survive. Trust me." Cole knelt fully now, his knees digging into the cold, uneven metal floor of the container as he carefully wrapped the puppies in the corner of his jacket. Their tiny bodies trembled, shivering not only from cold, but from the profound exhaustion of hunger and neglect. He whispered softly to them, words meant not just to comfort, but to affirm, to make tangible the presence of someone who would protect them. "You're safe now. You're going to be okay. We've got you." His voice cracked on the last word, and he swallowed hard, the lump in his throat betraying the soldier's composure he usually wore like armor. The mother dog shifted slightly, trying to rise, but her legs buckled under her. Riker pressed against her side, almost urging her to stay calm, his body tense and ready to support her if necessary. Cole moved closer, placing his hands gently under her frail body, lifting her carefully, feeling the weight that was far too little for a dog her size. She trembled against him, yet allowed herself to lean into his arms, a fragile acceptance that they were not enemies, that these humans and dogs could be allies in survival. Cole's mind raced as he considered the neglect that had brought them to this point. How long had they been locked here, abandoned, left to fend for themselves? How many nights had the mother spent guarding her babies without enough to eat, without water, fighting off exhaustion simply to keep them alive? The injustice of it, the casual cruelty, made his fists clench. He had seen humanity's darkness before, but this felt different, more intimate, more piercing, because the victims could not speak, could not plead in any way but survival instinct. And yet, despite it all, they had endured. And now, with Riker and him present, they had a chance. "Come on, boy," Cole murmured to Riker, who moved obediently toward the container's entrance, his nose scanning every corner, every shadow. Cole followed, holding the mother dog securely against his chest and cradling the puppies in his jacket. The moment was surreal, the morning sun spilling over rusted metal, birds fluttering nervously above, the distant sound of traffic beyond the junkyard, and them, a small cluster of life fighting back against the indifference of the world. It was quiet, except for the tiny whimpers of the pups and the low, steady whine of Riker, each sound punctuating the urgency of the moment. They reached the edge of the junkyard, where weeds pushed up through cracks in the concrete, and Cole spotted the owner emerging from his office. The man's expression was one of surprise and confusion, eyes wide as he took in the sight. A Marine carrying a nearly unconscious mother dog, 3 trembling puppies swaddled in a jacket, and a German shepherd pacing beside them with a solemn intensity. Cole straightened slightly, summoning every ounce of calm authority he possessed. "These dogs need help," he said simply, voice steady though his chest ached with emotion. The words felt insufficient, but they were all he could give. The owner hesitated, opening his mouth as if to protest, but Cole's gaze, firm and unwavering, communicated something deeper than words. Riker stepped closer to the mother, pressing against her gently, eyes locked on Cole as if to remind him that this was not just about obedience, it was about life and trust. The man's face softened, and without further comment, he stepped aside, allowing Cole to carry the fragile family toward his truck. The act of leaving the yard, of taking them into safety, felt monumental, almost ceremonial. It was more than rescue. It was a reclamation of life from neglect, an assertion that care and compassion could still exist even in the coldest, most forgotten places. In the truck, Cole set the mother dog down gently on a folded blanket and nestled the puppies beside her. Riker, refusing to leave her side, circled once and then settled, head resting lightly on her flank, his gaze sweeping over Cole as if to say, "They're safe now. You did well." Cole exhaled slowly, feeling a tension he hadn't realized he had been holding begin to ebb. The responsibility was immense, the stakes enormous, but the relief, the tiny spark of hope in those fragile bodies, was undeniable. Driving toward the veterinary clinic, Cole kept one hand on the mother, fingers stroking her fur absent-mindedly as he monitored her breathing, while Riker stayed alert, ears swiveling, watching the road and the sky, his body a silent protector. The puppies occasionally whined or stirred, tiny noises that reminded Cole of the precariousness of their situation and the urgency of each mile. He thought about the war zones he had navigated, the lives he had fought to protect, The countless missions where timing, precision, and instinct meant the difference between survival and loss. And he realized, in a quiet, profound way, that this act of saving animals who could not speak for themselves demanded the same vigilance, the same courage, and perhaps even more heart. Cole's eyes swept across the interior of the truck, the mother dog looking up at him with tentative trust, the puppies nestled together in warmth, Riker sitting alertly at her side, and he felt a mix of awe, exhaustion, and a lump in his throat that would not be denied. The world outside the windows moved in blurred motion, the morning light reflecting off the metal and asphalt, but inside the cab, time slowed. This was not just rescue. This was redemption, for them, and perhaps, in some quiet way, for him as well. The clinic came into view, a low building with faded paint and a sign that creaked in the morning breeze. Cole's hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind raced with 1,000 what-ifs. What if the mother dog's condition was worse than he feared? What if the puppies didn't make it? What if he had arrived too late? Riker's low whine drew his attention, and he glanced down to see the German Shepherd pressing close to the mother dog, their sides touching as if to transfer strength and comfort. The trust and instinct between the two animals was profound, and Cole felt a pang of humility and awe. He had spent years in combat, relying on his own training and Riker's instincts to survive. Yet here, in the quiet urgency of a junkyard rescue, he realized that life had handed him another battlefield, one without bullets, but no less demanding of vigilance, patience, and heart. As they pulled into the parking lot, the mother dog stirred in Cole's arms, lifting her head weakly, nostrils flaring as she caught the scent of the clinic. The puppies whimpered in response, their tiny bodies straining toward warmth and safety. Cole parked and leapt out, carefully carrying the mother to the entrance while the puppies nestled securely against his chest. Reichert trailed obediently, ears alert, muscles coiled, eyes scanning the surroundings. The doors of the clinic opened with a soft creak, and the nurse at the reception desk froze, taken aback by the unusual sight of a Marine carrying a limp dog, 3 frail puppies tucked into his jacket, and a perfectly alert German Shepherd walking at his side like a guardian. Cole's voice was firm but tinged with urgency. "I need immediate assistance. These animals need help. They've been abandoned and are in critical condition." He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, as if the years of disciplined military bearing could somehow contain the tidal wave of worry inside him. The nurse's eyes softened as she glanced at the mother dog, noting the shallow rise and fall of her chest, the glimmer of life in her weary eyes, and the frail, tiny forms of the puppies. She motioned toward the exam room. "Right this way," she said quietly, a mixture of concern and professional efficiency in her tone. Cole moved quickly, but gently, setting the mother down on a padded table. She flinched at first, weak muscles struggling to support her weight, but Riker pressed close, nudging her gently with his nose, and she seemed to draw courage from the dog's presence. The puppies were placed beside her, small bodies trembling against the sterile blankets of the exam table. Cole crouched, brushing his fingers lightly over the mother's fur, murmuring reassurance. "It's okay. We've got you. You're safe now." Each word carried the weight of promise and protection. Riker's deep, soft whines echoed in the room, a constant murmur of encouragement, as if the German Shepherd were translating human care into a language the mother could understand. The veterinarian emerged, a kind-faced woman with a calm authority, and Cole felt a flicker of hope mixed with fear. She assessed the scene with practiced efficiency, gently palpating the mother dog's abdomen and lifting her thin limbs with care. "She's severely dehydrated and malnourished," she said softly, her gaze meeting Cole's. "She's alive, and her spirit is strong, but she's been through a lot. The puppies are weak, but I think they have a chance if we act quickly." Cole nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The word chance was enough to ignite a fragile hope in his chest, though it did nothing to diminish the raw fear he had carried from the junkyard. Hours passed in a blur of antiseptic smells, soft cooing from the puppies, the rustle of blankets, and the quiet whines of Riker, who refused to leave the mother's side. Cole sat on a chair at the edge of the room, his fingers entwined, jaw tight, heart racing with each beep from monitoring equipment, each shallow breath from the mother dog. He replayed the scene in his mind, the container, the desperation, the first glimpse of life in those trembling puppies. He realized he had never felt more protective, more responsible in his entire life. Riker circled periodically, nudging the mother gently, reminding Cole to remain present, to maintain hope. The dog's instincts were unerring, precise, and entirely selfless, and Cole was in awe of the depth of loyalty and empathy the animal displayed. He spoke softly to the mother dog, naming her Freya as the vet suggested. "Freya, you're safe. You're going to get through this." Her eyes, wide with exhaustion, seemed to meet his own, a moment of connection that bridged species. The puppies whimpered and shifted toward her, drawing warmth and comfort from her fragile frame. Cole's chest ached in a way he hadn't experienced since losing comrades in combat. The raw vulnerability of these animals, the weight of their survival resting entirely in his hands, mirrored the responsibility he had once carried for men on the battlefield. But unlike the battlefield, there were no guns, no explosions, just the quiet demand of care, attention, and patience. As night began to fall, the mother dog stirred more robustly, encouraged by the soft ministrations of the clinic staff and the gentle presence of Riker. Cole could feel the tension in his chest ease slightly as he watched her lift her head, sniff at the air, and attempt to adjust her position. The puppies responded immediately, their small whimpers shifting into soft squeaks, limbs stretching and kicking in a display of life asserting itself. Cole exhaled slowly, feeling a surge of relief, but also a deep awareness of how much work lay ahead. Recovery would not be instant. Healing would be slow and painstaking, but for now, they had survived the first night, and that was everything. Riker sat upright beside the mother dog, ears swiveling toward Cole as if to check his understanding. The Marine reached down to scratch behind the German Shepherd's ears, a gesture of gratitude and acknowledgement. "We did good, boy," Cole whispered. "We saved them." Riker's tail thumped softly against the blanket, a small sign of affirmation, and Cole felt tears prick at his eyes. He had never cried on the battlefield, never allowed himself to break in front of comrades. But here, surrounded by life so fragile and resilient, he felt a release that was long overdue. He realized that in saving Freya and her puppies, he was not just rescuing them. He was confronting his own humanity, his own capacity for compassion and care beyond the strict codes of combat. By the time the first night passed, Cole had settled into a rhythm with the animals and the clinic staff. Freya was stable but still weak, the puppies feeding under careful supervision, and Riker remained ever vigilant, a quiet sentinel of unwavering loyalty. Cole leaned back, exhaustion heavy in his limbs, but a strange peace settled over him. He had witnessed suffering, he had acted, and now, together, they had carved out a space where hope could flourish. And in that moment, amidst the antiseptic smells, the soft whimpers, and the quiet breathing of life slowly returning, Cole felt a bond deeper than he had ever known, with the animals, with Riker, and with the small, fragile miracle of survival he had helped create. Days passed at a pace that seemed both impossibly slow and impossibly fast. Cole found himself spending hours at the clinic, watching Freya's fragile body respond to food, fluids, and careful attention. Each small movement, her head lifting slightly, a tentative wag of her tail, her first hesitant stretch, was a victory, a milestone in the slow reclamation of life. The puppies, once fragile and trembling, began to squirm with more purpose, their tiny limbs gaining strength with every passing hour. Cole marveled at the resilience before him, the sheer will to survive etched into every movement, every blink, every sound. Riker was a constant presence, a sentinel whose instincts seemed heightened even further in this environment. He paced and watched, occasionally leaning over the mother or gently nudging a puppy with his nose, checking their breathing and their response to Cole's gentle hands.
When one of the puppies whined too loudly or seemed restless, Riker would nudge it toward the warmth of the mother, guiding them with a precision that was almost uncanny.
Cole often caught himself staring at the dog in quiet awe. He had relied on Riker countless times in combat zones, but here, in this quiet struggle for life, the dog's empathy and intelligence shone in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Cole adjusted to this new rhythm as well. He slept little, his nights punctuated by the soft sounds of the mother dog moving, the puppy's small cries, and Riker's low, comforting whines. He would sit beside the examination table, hand on Freya's back, whispering encouragement to both mother and puppies, speaking to them as if words alone could impart strength. "You're safe now," he murmured repeatedly, the phrase becoming a mantra, an assurance to himself as much as to them. "You're going to make it." He watched the puppies nurse with increasing vigor, their once weak cries transforming into small, triumphant squeaks that resonated in the small clinic room. As the days grew into a week, Freya's body began to fill out, the sharp contours of her ribs softening under the new nourishment. She grew more alert, lifting her head to follow Cole's movements, allowing him to scratch behind her ears without flinching, leaning into his touch with a trust that seemed almost sacred. The puppies developed personalities even in their tiny forms. One was fearless and curious, crawling boldly over Cole's hands, while another was cautious, seeking the warmth of Mother and Riker's side before venturing further. The third was somewhere in between, alternating between exploration and retreat. Cole named them in quiet reflection of their characters: Max, the brave one, Lila, the timid one, and Finn, the playful intermediary. Riker adapted too, showing an almost parental attentiveness that drew tears from Cole more than once. The German Shepherd would gently correct the puppies if they scrambled too roughly, or guide them toward their mother when they became separated. He lay close to Freya, sharing body warmth, and occasionally pressed a reassuring nuzzle against Cole's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the human's care. Cole marveled at the depth of this silent communication. He had spent years honing his own instincts in the field, but here, he realized, instincts alone could not account for the unspoken bonds that formed between human and dog, between dog and dog, between all of them united in the fragile hope of survival. Cole took long moments to observe quietly, sitting with his back against the wall, Riker at his side, and Freya and her pups clustered together. The light of the setting sun filtered through the clinic windows, casting long golden beams over the scene. For the first time since leaving active duty, Cole felt a quietness within him, a sense of peace that came not from victory or achievement, but from witnessing life emerge and flourish under care. He realized that in many ways, this small family's survival mirrored the lessons of his past: resilience, loyalty, trust, and the quiet courage to keep moving forward despite overwhelming odds. As Freya grew stronger, Cole began introducing small walks around the clinic, allowing her to regain her legs, guiding her carefully with a leash, while Riker patrolled beside them like a protective shadow. The puppies were placed in small carriers for short trips, their eyes wide with wonder at the new world outside the clinic walls. Cole marveled at how quickly they adapted, each milestone, first stumble, first tumble, first playful bark, a small triumph that reminded him that life, no matter how fragile, sought a way to endure. Nightly routines became a tapestry of care and companionship. Cole would lie on the floor beside the padded blankets, letting the puppies crawl across his chest, Freya resting her head near his shoulder, and Riker pressed close as ever. He whispered to them about life outside the walls of the clinic, about warmth, safety, and trust, as if planting seeds for the life he intended to give them beyond survival. And through it all, he felt a deep, unexpected healing within himself. The scars from the battlefield, the loneliness, the grief he had carried for so long, all softened in the presence of these creatures who had been abandoned yet persevered, who had found strength and trust in the arms of one man and his dog. By the end of the 4th week, the transformation was remarkable.
Freya's coat had regained a sheen, her eyes sparkled with vitality, and her movements had the grace of a dog that had not only survived, but was learning to thrive. The puppies played with one another and with Riker, testing boundaries, exploring new textures and sounds, and curling up against Cole as if sensing that he had become their anchor in a chaotic world. Cole often found himself overwhelmed by emotion, tears brimming unbidden, his heart full of gratitude, love, and awe. He realized that this family, Freya, her puppies, and Riker, had given him more than purpose. They had reminded him of the raw beauty of life, the power of compassion, and the profound impact of presence and care. In the quiet moments, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Cole would watch them all huddle together in warmth and safety, and he understood something essential. To save another life is not merely to act, it is to witness, to nurture, and to allow the heart to open fully, without fear, in the service of hope. Weeks turned into months, and Cole found himself deeply entwined in the lives of Freya, her puppies, and Riker in ways he had never imagined possible. The once fragile mother dog had grown strong, her muscles filling out beneath a now lustrous coat, her eyes bright and alert, reflecting a vitality that had been absent the day he had first discovered her in that rusted container. The puppies, Max, Leela, and Finn, had become mischievous little explorers, each with a personality that brought both chaos and laughter into Cole's world. Even the timid Leela now ventured further from her mother with the careful encouragement of both Cole and Riker, her tiny tail wagging with tentative confidence. Riker remained ever vigilant, yet he had softened in his approach. He allowed the puppies to climb over him, to tug gently at his ears, and to test their boundaries with playful nips and bumps. He was patient, guiding them with gentle nudges and careful corrections, and he had become not just a protector, but a mentor, teaching them the language of safety, trust, and loyalty. Cole often watched in awe as Riker would position himself between Freya and the rowdy pups during moments of overexcitement, his gaze steady and unwavering, silently communicating both authority and reassurance. It reminded Cole in stark, profound ways of the loyalty and teamwork that had kept him alive in combat, translated now into the domestic battlefield of rescue and recovery. Cole's own transformation was subtler but no less profound. Nights once spent in restless sleep, haunted by memories of war and loss, were now filled with quiet companionship. He would lie on the floor of the living room, the puppies wriggling over his chest, Freya resting her head on his knee, and Riker curled tightly beside him. There was a rhythm to these moments, a grounding stability that he had not realized he had been missing. He could feel the weight of anxiety and grief lifting, replaced by a deep, steady sense of purpose and connection. The small lives he had saved had, in a quiet but irrevocable way, saved him as well. One crisp morning, Cole watched as Max launched himself into the air, attempting to catch a leaf blowing from the yard, while Leela cautiously chased after him, and Finn tumbled after them with gleeful abandon. Freya observed with calm amusement, her ears twitching with every misstep, while Riker barked softly, corralling the puppies when they wandered too close to the fence. Cole laughed, a sound that felt strange yet liberating, echoing across the yard. It was a laugh he hadn't heard from himself in years, a pure, unfiltered sound born from relief, joy, and love. In those quiet moments, he reflected on the journey that had begun with a single instinctive act, following Riker into the junkyard. The rusted container, the desolation, the frailty of life barely clinging to survival, it had all seemed insurmountable at the time. Yet here they were, thriving, a small family bound together by trust, care, and unwavering loyalty. Cole realized that heroism did not always manifest in grand gestures of valor on distant battlefields. Sometimes it lived in the quiet persistence of saving a life, offering warmth, and simply being present in moments that demanded patience and compassion. The bond between him and Freya deepened daily. She followed him from room to room, nuzzling his hand when he worked, leaning into him when he sat to read, and curling at his feet when he slept. She had grown comfortable in the knowledge that he would not abandon her, that he was steadfast in his protection, and that his presence meant safety. The puppies mirrored her trust, learning to approach him without fear, seeking his attention, guidance, and gentle discipline. Riker observed all this, sometimes joining in the play, other times standing back as a silent guardian, content in his role as the family's anchor. Cole often thought back to the first moment he had seen the mother dog in the junkyard, emaciated, trembling, fighting to protect her tiny, helpless offspring. The memory was raw, but it was no longer just a reminder of suffering. It had become a testament to resilience, hope, and the transformative power of empathy. He realized that life's most profound moments often arrived in unexpected forms, that courage existed in many shapes, whether in a battle-hardened soldier, a loyal German shepherd, or a frail mother dog fighting to give her pups a chance. He made a vow that day to himself, to ensure their well-being, to protect them as fiercely as he would have protected any comrade, and to celebrate every moment of growth, every triumph over fear, every victory over the fragility of life. The small family he had rescued had become more than dependents. They were companions, teachers, and a reminder that life, even when abandoned and broken, had a remarkable capacity to heal and flourish with care. On a golden afternoon, as Cole watched the puppies tumble over each other in playful chaos, Freya lying in the grass with eyes half closed in contentment, and Riker standing sentinel at their side, he felt an overwhelming sense of completeness. His heart, once heavy with the weight of memories and battles past, now swelled with gratitude, pride, and an abiding love. He had discovered that true strength was not only the ability to survive, but the courage to give life, to nurture it, and to embrace it fully. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of fur, the soft nuzzles of trust, and the gentle rhythm of breathing, Cole understood something that went beyond words. The act of rescue had transformed them all, the dogs and himself. Their lives were irrevocably intertwined, each heartbeat, each playful bound, a testament to the unbreakable bonds forged through instinct, compassion, and unwavering loyalty. And as the sun set over the yard, painting the world in amber light, he realized that they had all, in their own ways, found home, together, safe, and profoundly alive.